welcome to the Sanctuary, a safe space to speak from the heart. I'm your host, Israel, and my guest today is the creator, founder of Country Liberty, Sawyer Hannay. How are you doing today, Sawyer?
I'm doing fantastic today, man. Thank you very much for having me on. How you doing?
Good. I'll just start right with it. How did it feel being on Dragon's Den?
Dragon's Den was certainly a roller coaster of excitement and emotions and things like that. It was something that I wanted to do for a long time. I was a big fan of the show, and it was really nerve-wracking and exciting to finally get on.
What was the process like? What was the process to get on, and how did you prepare for your pitch?
Sure, yeah. So this year, I believe, was different than most other years, just with COVID. A lot of different kind of rule changes and a lot of just unknowns. But my first pitch, actually, they host these regional pitches in one per province. So I drove down to St. John and did a regional pitch, and this was before COVID. So I did a pitch in person. And then after that, everything was done basically remotely. There was some Zoom calls and things like that. Once I realized that I kind of made it past the first cut of the regional pitch, they did an interview over Zoom, things like that. They kept me in the loop. There was a chance that I would have to pitch the actual Dragons over Zoom. And I had that option too if I felt, that was safer for me. But I wanted to get there in person and get down to the studio. So I drove down to, I left here in New Brunswick and drove down to Toronto in August and pitched them in the flesh. The big difference is where we weren't allowed, other models, and we weren't allowed, there was a lot of restrictions within the studio that, previous years didn't have. But, all in all, I was able to get down there in studio, pitch the Dragons, in real life and try to make my best impression that way.
Right. So when you see no models, when you did a drive to Toronto, you had to take everything that was on the set, right?
Essentially, yeah. I actually mailed, because again, they weren't sure if people would be flying or driving, and they had kind of a different set of rules if you flew or if you drove. So I ended up driving, so I was able to bring product with me, but I did ship product beforehand. But in normal years, you would have maybe 2 or 3 models especially with my business clothing, you'd have 2 or 3 models maybe modeling the product. And, you might have somebody up there with you for the pitch, but they're very strict on the amount of people allowed in. I had to use mannequins, for example, instead of actual models, and I had to pitch by myself and, different things like that. That was, a little different than previous years.
And so you get on there. Action, it's your turn to get in there with the nerves.
Yeah, there was tons of nerves. But honestly, the nerves were more so before, the days leading up. I tried to keep it pretty calm and casual and just kind of enjoy the city of Toronto for a few days before I actually went to pitch instead of just obsessing, over the pitch itself. I was very well prepared, which gave me confidence and peace of mind. I had practiced a lot, months leading up and weeks leading up and days leading up to the actual pitch. So that brought me some comfort. But the morning of, I was the first pitch of the morning. It was a 9 a.m. pitch. I was in the studio by 7 that morning. So that 2 hours from 7 to 9, I was excited and nervous. And the first 20 seconds of the actual pitch, I was a little bit nervous. But once I settled in and get comfortable, and especially once they started to kind of converse back and talk back with me, it became more of a conversation than a stressful business pitch,
Right. So at what point did you know that, okay, they were kind of getting the sense of what you were trying to pitch them?
Well, the rules of the show were I had 1 minute, 60 seconds of without interruption. So the whole goal was, and the Dragons knew as well, hey, we're going to give each pitch at least 60 seconds to kind of get their story across without interruption. So I knew that I needed to try to relay as much information about the business in that first 60 seconds as I could. And they didn't interrupt for probably, 2 minutes instead of just 1. So I was lucky I had a little bit extra time too before the questions and stuff came in. So within that first minute and a half, 2 minutes, I tried to give as much information as I could. And there was still some confusion, and some questions I had to answer in different areas. But for the most part, I feel I got my message across in that first, 2 minutes.
And then, you got the feedback from the Dragons. People that were on board, but there was this lady, I can't recall her name. She was like, what? She just
Manjeet,
was like, what are you trying to, like, I don't get this. When you get such a reaction, like, how do you handle it?
It was interesting. I mean, you have to keep in mind that it's a television show, right? So, and there was only, maybe 6 or 7 minutes that was shown on TV, but I was actually in there for an hour. So there was a lot of footage that was cut out, and Manjeet, like everything, she said, and those tough questions and her comments and stuff, she said all those things for sure. But she also said a lot of really nice things, complimented the business, even defended me in a few cases when some of the other Dragons had questions raised. So I feel like the way the show was edited, they really made her out to be like a villain. But in reality, she wasn't that harsh. I mean, she did challenge me, but she also, complimented me. That wasn't shown on TV. So for the most part, I mean, I try to prepare for all the questions I thought they would ask me. So I try to have answers for those tough questions that I was anticipating. Manjeet definitely threw a couple in my direction. But I quickly realized, hey, Manjeet wasn't that interested in the business, so I wanted to focus more heavily on the Dragons that I knew were interested,
Yeah, no, that was a great strategy. And then, at a point you had 3, and then it became 2. Like, what was what made you go in the direction you finally went with those 2 Dragons?
Yeah, I've watched the show a lot, and I've seen a lot of pitchers make mistakes when they, talk too fast or talk too much, and especially during the negotiating part and when the deals are being offered. So I knew going into the show I was going to give each Dragon their time to talk without interruption and just hear from them and hear what they had to say. So as I was kind of going down the list of the Dragons going in and out, I just kind of waited it out, and I got all the deals on the table. And then, essentially just like I would do any business deal, I looked at the pros and cons to each of their offerings. It was pretty simple because their percentages were all a little different. So I could very easily, calculate kind of the best deal. But by the time it went down the line and it got to Jim, who made his offer in the end, Lane and Arlene both had made Lane made an offer, Arlene didn't, but then they got talking and then they made a collaborative offer. So before I even kind of had a chance to speak or decided I wanted to speak, their deal had changed. So Arlene came in and with Lane. And the only real kind of tough part for me was I wanted to counter. I really wanted Jim involved, and Lane showed a ton of interest. So I really wanted him involved, and I really like Arlene as well. But Vince had made an offer. So when I countered for Jim and Lane and Arlene, I think it insulted Vince a little bit. So he dropped out. So I wasn't really surprised that he was going to drop out when I focused on the other counter offer. And then Arlene just kind of opted out as well. I mean, they made it easy for me. She kind of opted out once I countered with a lower percentage. And then that just left Lane and Jim, and those were 2 guys I really wanted to work with anyway. So it was pretty easy to accept that deal.
Right. Yeah. No, that was a great episode. And so you get the deal. Did you drive back home right away to New Brunswick?
I drove back. I left the next day. I took 2 days to drive home. I stayed just on the border of Ontario in Cornwall, I believe the town was, right before Quebec. Stayed there the next day and then drove the rest of the drive after that. But see, with the Atlantic rules, as soon as I entered New Brunswick, I had to quarantine for 2 weeks. So right away, this was in September now, I had quarantined for 2 weeks. And then came out, but the whole episode didn't air until November, and I had signed a non-disclosure agreement, so I couldn't tell anybody what I was doing, where I was going, why I traveled to Ontario. I just told people vaguely it was for business, and that I had to quarantine when I got back.
Right. Okay, yeah, just wanted to start with that because it was great watching that episode, and I just, I'm curious how, the behind the scenes of that goes. But let's start at the beginning, though. you grew up playing hockey, and then you pretty much went from there to, I think, the Chicago Wolves, right?
Yeah, so a few stops along the way.
All right.
I started my junior in Halifax, actually, in your neck of the woods, and played for the Mooseheads there for a few years.
Nice.
I was eventually drafted to the NHL, the Vancouver Canucks, and Vancouver assigned me to Europe to develop, so I played in Europe for a while. And then also Vancouver had connected me with a tryout with Chicago, with the Chicago Wolves. So I signed a contract with those guys in the American League. They sent me down to the East Coast League, played there for a while, and then eventually went to school, and that's when I started my business.
Okay, you know what? I've always been meaning to ask this, but I just, everyone I ask just watches hockey. They don't play. Why is like fighting allowed in hockey? Like, it's like, it's legal, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
people are playing, then you stop, you take out the gloves, and then they throw down.
Yeah.
Like, how?
Yeah, it's funny because I think it's the only sport you're allowed to do that. But honestly, it's a self-policing way of the game. Like it really keeps people accountable. Like it keeps people from avoiding cheap shots. It keeps people from doing certain things on the ice because, if you do those things, you're going to have to answer the bell. You're going to have to drop your gloves and fight. And in most cases, people don't want to fight. There's a small percentage of guys that can and will and that are good at it, and then a higher percentage of guys that don't want to. So you kind of keep those guys that don't want to fight accountable by just having a few guys skating around that will. So it's certainly an interesting aspect to the game, and it's entertaining. But just speaking from a player standpoint, it's a lot of fun, and it works. Like I said, it keeps a lot of people accountable.
Yeah, it's always fun to watch. But like, so you decide, okay, I'm going back to school. Like, did you start Country Liberty while you were in school or after it was done?
Yeah, so I started it when I was in school. When I was living in Europe, that's when I kind of come up with the idea, but I was so focused on hockey, I didn't do anything about it. And then when I went to school, I knew I was, going to university for the duration of a degree. So I said, if I'm going to start passion project like this, now would be the time. So when I was in university, that's when I got started and just started selling out of my apartment on campus.
And the name, where is it from?
The name was pretty simple to me. I wanted somebody to be able to read the name and just understand it right away. I wanted it to be very self-explanatory. So it was very important to have the word country within the name to me. And then I was just looking for another word that represented freedom, essentially. So originally I wanted to call the brand Country Free. And then as I got going with trademark searches and things like that and started to take it more serious, I realized that Liberty would have been a much stronger name moving forward. So then, it just kind of came together as Country Liberty. And originally it seemed like a mouthful. Like it seemed like it was a really long name. But now that we've been operating so much and, saying it so often, it flows naturally.
Right. Yeah, no, completely, totally. And then you're selling your dome. But so it's like, it was just like you making, was it t-shirts, was it hoodies? Which ones were you focused on?
Yeah. So I had a partner actually at the time. So we each put in $200. And we ordered, we got our design made, which cost me $180. And then we ordered 12 T-shirts. So we printed on the 12 T-shirts. We each kept one. So I had 10 to sell. Sold them to basically family and friends. And then I ordered after that 50 tank tops, which led into hoodies and then eventually hats. So it started with tees, then tanks, then hoodies, and then ball hats.
Right. And then, so you're growing it there. At what point did you see, okay, it's a viable business? Was it right away?
Definitely not right away. No, there was a long time. I don't know how long, but there was certainly a few years where I wasn't, even paying myself because we weren't generating enough money. And to be fair, I wasn't putting in the amount of effort either. I was studying and I was playing hockey and I was doing different things. But once I graduated from university, I was faced with a decision, do I want to play professional hockey again or do I want to take this business more serious? So I, decided to kind of go all in on the business. And it was at that point that I had bought my partner out. and just went on my own. So I kind of took the risk at that point, went all in, and just started working like super full time on it, keeping as much money as I could within the business, working other jobs to pay my bills, and then just trying to grow the business organically.
How difficult was that decision?
It was really tough. I mean, I played hockey my whole life, and I reached a certain point that it could sustain my living. I could play professionally and get paid. So it was really tough for that point. It's like, I love hockey and I could do that as a job, or, I really enjoy this new thing called business that was new to me. So yeah, it was really tough, but at the end of the day, I feel like, being a business owner, there's more longevity to my career. I could, run businesses until I'm 85 years old, where as an athlete, you're limited to, 30, 35 years old, and then you're done,
Yeah. Okay, so you go all in, working, and then plowing everything back into Country Liberty. Were you still in Europe at this point?
No. So I had left Europe when I was 19, and then I started university when I was 21. So when I was 21, that's when I started kind of coming up with the idea.
And where was it? It was here? And
it was in New Brunswick, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so it's growing. What point did you get into social media? Because your Instagram is crazy. Both your personal one and Country Liberty's one.
Thank you. I got into social right away. Like when I first started, even just selling out of the apartment, I started a Facebook and Instagram page. I wasn't very good at marketing. I didn't use Facebook at all at that point personally. Instagram a little bit, but it was more like kind of university type pictures, hanging out with buddies, things like that, right? It wasn't really marketing. So then I started to kind of get into it a little bit there and just started to kind of learn as I used it. But use that as a free tool to kind of get some brand awareness and try to generate some sales.
And so how did you grow it? Because, it wasn't right away, right?
No, it was steady growth, just steady growth right up until now, basically, and just posting good content and doing a lot of collaborations and some influencer marketing and contesting and just anything. I mean, social media changes so fast, and so does the strategy. So throughout the last few years, I've been just trying whatever strategies seem to be on trend and working, and yeah, that's kind of how we arrived to where we are.
Yeah. It's grown is a lot. How do you decide? So most of the people on the pages, are they people that actually bought the outfit, or models specifically just to model the outfit?
It depends. We do a lot of everything. A handful of the shots are models, so very specific. Us going out and shooting and most often with new products, that's how we get our content as well. But some of it's customer generated, customers that are wearing it, and some of them are just other creative minds out there that we kind of ship products to, and they go out and create on their own and do photos and videos, things like that, and then send back to us to post.
One thing I didn't touch on was your TikTok. How did you get into that? Because it's insane too.
Yeah, so it's been a few months since I've been on TikTok, but for a while I was on it really heavy, really aggressively, and really learning, because I spoke to a lot of people, not a lot, but a few people that were on Instagram when Instagram first started, and some of the biggest influencers and biggest pages on Instagram now were the first people on Instagram, or the first of their niche on Instagram. So I recognized a lot of value in being first. And when I heard of this thing that was kind of hitting the scene, TikTok, I needed to explore it and start experimenting and posting for myself. So I made a personal page and did that myself, and kind of grew organically as well. But the quality of content there is much lower. Again, I haven't been on in a few months, but I think the reason for my growth was simply because I was there first. I was an early person on the platform, not necessarily because the content is that high of quality,
But it is, because let's talk about something you did a lot and did properly on your TikTok. especially, was like taking people on the journey of renovating this house. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, with TikTok, it was just a big experiment. I'd go on and be serious. I'd go on and crack jokes. I'd go on and do business stuff, or I'd do renovation stuff. And one of the things that really clicked with people was renovations and building the Liberty Village, and renovating cabins, renovating my house, things like that. People seem really interested in. So that was just something I jumped on. I mean, it was something I was doing anyway. I wasn't buying houses to renovate them for my TikTok page. Those were things that I was doing. So I said, I might as well be filming and sharing it as well,
Right.
if people enjoy watching it.
Right. No, it's great. I love it. And then you mentioned Liberty Village. Let's talk about that. So Country Liberty is grown, it's doing okay. And then at what point did you think of the village?
Yeah, so I'm the type of person that I don't like to sit still too long. Like, I always like to be trying different things, doing different things, and learning all the time. So I always had this kind of dream to have a small cabin resort. And once Country Liberty started to grow and as a brand and become better known, I really recognized the value of leveraging the Country Liberty brand into another business. So I thought, hey, if I can borrow some brand equity and promote different projects that are all relevant to Country Liberty, from a business side of things, I would. But also, I realized, our customers, there's a massive overlap between customers that supported my clothing and customers that enjoy that type of like cabin outdoor experience.
Right.
So I basically just married the two and started, building my first little resort here in New Brunswick.
Right. So let's get into that. You had this idea. How did you execute it?
Honestly, like crossing my fingers, working really hard and just trying my best. Like, it was the first time I did anything like this. I didn't have really much guidance, so I made a lot of mistakes and I kind of learned the hard way in a few areas, but I basically just went at it. I ended up buying 4 cabins that were already built. I kind of made a deal with the owner for those, and I bought a piece of land, and so I put the two together, and one thing kind of led me to the other in terms of like the infrastructure. One contractor would lead me to the next contractor and lead me to the next person, until ultimately I had the whole thing built. So, it was basically just a step by step and just kind of learning as I went, type of process.
Right. So what facilities are at the village now?
So we have 8 units to rent. We just got 2 hot tubs in. They're not quite operating yet, but they will be in the next week or two. We have 2 more hot tubs on the way. We have a beach volleyball court, great big gazebo with a couple barbecues, tons of like lawn games, like your horseshoes and your cornhole and your washer toss and things like that. And then we also I'm working on an older, restoring an old cabin that is going to be used as like a community building, where you can go in and play cards, or you can go in and eat lunch, or you can, play board games, have a drink, those types of things. So that's something that isn't available yet, but something that we're working on right now.
Dope.
Yeah.
Like cabin, stay on the, nature stuff is like so aligned with your brand. And I remember watching that pitch and thinking, that lady, I can't keep forgetting her name. She's like, it's a t-shirt stuff. And like, no, there's this village. And that was, I felt, at least how we saw it in the show, was what brought some of the other dragons in, when they're like, okay, wait, so you have this thing, you grew it into this big business now, but wait, you are also tying this thing to what you do. And it's like, oh, well, I get it. It makes sense. Cause like, this is like it's a brand actually, right? So it can have different offshoots. And then the Liberty Village is another of the offshoots of it. I think that's what pulled people in. One thing I like also is on your, I think it's on your Instagram, or maybe the Country Liberty one. There's a photo of you holding up this, like a map on a tiny, just on like on a book.
Yeah.
And kind of draws like what the cabins will look like. Is that where it started and then it became that?
Actually, I drew that picture during my quarantine after Dragon's Den. So that that actually came after. We built the village first, and that drawing represents a sign that we're painting for when our guests arrive. They can take a look at the sign and understand where each cabin is and what each cabin, I guess the purpose of each cabin and things like that. So that was actually a drawing to replicate a sign that we're getting painted.
Nice. Is the sign done yet?
No, not yet. No.
Okay, so you had this idea for a while. COVID came. How did it affect Liberty Village? Basically, how did it affect everything you've been working on so far?
Yeah, so I am very thankful that I'm still in business, and I know that it's such a tough time for a lot of business owners and operators, and just tough time for everybody, individuals. And I was pretty afraid. I was at a trade show in January before COVID started, and I remember hearing a lot of these manufacturers from around the world talking about this virus and how serious it was in their home countries. It wasn't serious yet here in North America, but come March it got really serious. Everything started to close down, and I was pretty worried and concerned about how it would affect my livelihood and my business. And Liberty Village wasn't even open yet at that point. It was like 75% built, so I was completely invested in that. There was no turning back at that point. So I basically just, kind of crossed my fingers and tried to react and adapt as quickly as I could to just the world around me that was changing so fast. Completely changed my marketing strategy with Liberty Village. I really planned on bringing in people from outside New Brunswick. That was kind of the goal, just because I was new to the vacation scene and the tourism scene. And I assumed that most people from New Brunswick would vacation outside of the province. So I thought, I would try to bring people from outside the province within the province. But in reality, a lot of New Brunswickers, 95% of our customers at Liberty Village have been from New Brunswick. So very, very thankful for that, for the support here, for everybody, doing their staycations. So that was certainly something. And then, when the clothing stores closed, I focused more heavily online. That was all I could do, right? It was my only sales channel at that point. So when the stores closed, I put more effort into the online strategy, and just kind of adapted along the way.
Yeah, online is doing a lot of the, push for most people and selling their products. But let's go back a little bit though. How did you get into your first store? Was that a difficult thing to achieve?
The first store wasn't too tough. I'm from a small town. There's only 800 people. And when I got back from university, I had just a little bit of product. And I got into that first store based on consignment. Basically, no risk to the store owner. If we sold things, I would pay him a commission. And that was basically it. But, being from a small town, it was well supported. The harder part was getting into the more stores outside of my hometown, because in my hometown, everybody knew what I was up to and who I was and things like that. But getting into stores outside of my hometown was harder because, most people didn't know who I was. Most people didn't know what the brand was. So I didn't have any of those kind of advantages getting into those stores. But I eventually found store owners that, shared the same values as I did and agreed to carry the products in their stores and just kind of grow that way.
Yeah. It also helps that the outfits look great, though.
Thank you.
It helps that it looks great. So now, having a dragon as part of your business, how is that experience?
It's really cool. I had this conversation this morning. I always view these dragons as celebrities, and now I'm able to work with them and have calls with them and email them and things like that. So it's really, really interesting and really cool. And my whole goal was working with them was to simply, surround myself with successful people that have, really good experience. And that was the whole reason why I wanted to go on the show. So now just being able to interact and just learn from learn from the people that have been there, done that and at a huge scale. It's really cool. And, the most value I take from it is just those learning experiences. They have so much to offer, and they don't even know half the time they're teaching, but just watching them, you can learn things, and watching the way they carry themselves and the things they do and the way that they think, So my goal is to, become a successful business person. So I want to surround myself with, other successful business people.
So, you've owned a business. I mean, you started with a partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you bought them out, and you've pretty much owned Country Liberty yourself.
Yep.
Every decision you've had to make. I mean, I know they just I can't recall how many percent you were offering for your business, but like now you have to put them into consideration, right? When you're making decisions and stuff.
I don't really, because it's funny. The deal that I agreed to on the show is completely different than the actual deal that happened. And that's what goes on with Dragon's Den. You make a deal on the show, and it's a handshake basis, and it's an introduction essentially. But once the due diligence starts, a renegotiation is born basically. So based on the way the deal was, I still have, full control, and I get to make my decisions and the way that I want, which is important to them too. They invested in a business and a business operator based on what they've done. So a lot of these dragons don't want to come in and completely change your business or completely change the way you operate. They chose to invest in you because they think that there's something there. So they just kind of let us do our thing.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And then I guess, what is your approach to business? You've done this for a couple of years now. What are like your 3 things you always look out for whenever you want to start something? Say like before you started Liberty Village.
Yeah. Definitely 2 things I always consider is, 1, the numbers. I mean, the numbers don't lie. You can love a business or you can want a business to work, but if the numbers don't check out, it'll never work. And 3, I say 2 would be definitely passion. Like I'm not interested in, we all have 24 hours a day. We have maybe 10, 12 productive hours a day. I'm not interested in working on something that I'm not passionate about. Just because, life's too short. So certainly passion is one thing I always look for in projects, in businesses, and things like that. And what was my third thought? Jeez, I'm losing my train of thought here. Well, I guess my third would probably be the amount of effort. Again, we're limited time. So starting the village, I had to have a real conversation with myself and say, how much time and effort am I going to put into this? And it's important that I don't take away from Country Liberty by, spending too much time at Liberty Village or too much time on a different project. It's important to respect, the business that pays the bills, which is, Country Liberty. And it's important not to get excited over something new just because it's new. So yeah, I would definitely say, time, energy, passion, and then the finances, the numbers.
Right. The numbers for sure. Talking about numbers, how do you decide the people you hire to work for you in any of your businesses?
I typically, for a while I was the only one. So I learned the basics of different areas. And as a business owner, you have to wear a lot of different hats. So I learned the bases and then I basically reverse engineer myself. It's like I look at my weaknesses and inefficiencies and try to fill those gaps with working with people and partnering with different people and hiring different people just to, basically fill in the gaps within my skill set and also within my inefficiencies. So that's basically how I decide to, work with different people.
Yeah. No, I mean, because you kind of want to have people that balance out the things you're not really strong at. So when you have that, it just takes the thing to the next level. Now that the Liberty Village is where you'd like it to be, and vaccines are rolling out, and eventually life will open. Once Liberty Village is doing the numbers you had in mind, are you looking at opening up something else?
I'm always looking at doing different things. I mean, that's just my personality. Yeah, I mean, I've had 10 different business ideas in the last year. But I need to remain disciplined and focused on what's important and what I have instead of focusing on what I don't have. And then when the time is right, yeah, absolutely, I'd open something else and probably associated with the brand Country Liberty, because you can see a theme here where Country Liberty is the brand and I'm just creating extensions off the brand.
Yeah.
I mean, I can almost guarantee I'll start more businesses that are simply extensions off what I already have.
One other thing that also stood out for me on your Instagram was one, I don't know if it's just a hood but basically you made Elsie strong.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So my minor hockey coach had passed away on April 3rd in a boating tragedy off Shetty Camp in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. And it really hit hard. It was really upsetting. The entire community has been upset and is upset. And I was very upset. And I just wanted to, do something good to kind of give back in honor of the minor hockey coach that I had lost, Craig Sock. We called him Jumbo. So I wanted to give back in the name of Jumbo somehow. So I, simply just looked into, again, my skill set and resources and network and decided, hey, the easiest thing would probably be to, come out with a design and a hoodie that represents this project and donate all of the proceeds back. So we're just kind of at the tail end of the project. Actually, it was very successful. I'm not really sure exactly how much we raised yet, but I know that it was a really good chunk of change, and it's really rewarding, and I'm really, really proud to be able to, donate that very soon in his name.
That's another, that kind of leads me to the next thing where, you're building Country Liberty, it's bringing funds, it's you built a successful business, but there's something when you do where you always give back, and it's not just because a tragedy happened like in this case, but why is giving back something that's important to you?
I know that, especially starting out, and even now, I mean, I'm still young in my career, we all need help, and sometimes a little bit of help, or what seems like a little bit to somebody is a lot to somebody else. So to me, I think that that's important is, if you can provide some of the breaks that people catch along their journeys, I think that it's really good. And I look back, and like I said, Jumbo was a minor hockey coach of mine for 10 years, all volunteer based. He didn't have to do that. He chose to give back. He chose to, help us kids, which we probably weren't always that much fun to work with, because we're little kids, so he made those sacrifices and commitment, and to me, I would like to do that now that I'm an adult. I would like to give back as well as much as I can, just knowing that how far it goes, and just, being grateful for everybody that had given me different things along my journey.
Yeah, that whole, coming from a small community, building this career, and then, things that have happened to you have come because people have also stretched a hand to lift you up. So doing the things you're doing to give back is always great. I'm going to let you go because you're a really busy man, Sawyer. But I have one last question for you, and this is this is just really for me. Like, what do you do when, because like in Instagram, TikTok, whatever, it's kind of like the highlights, right? It's really difficult to show when shit is not going well.
Yeah.
But in a business, it's not always roses, right? So how do you handle those not very good times and keep it going?
That's a great question. A great point about social media. I mean, social media is the highlights, and that's, we should all know that. For those that don't, we should, because it isn't, like you said, it isn't all just roses, and often, there is headaches. Every week for sure, there's different challenges and things that I have, sometimes every day, and it's just a matter of staying the course and staying positive, and having faith and confidence that you'll figure it out. And most times we do. I mean, there's been a lot of problems, and there's been, just problems. And there's been times that, you lost money, or you lose out on a deal, or you different things. And that's just business, and that's just life. But for the most part, things work itself out, and I think that it's important too. I always try to ground myself and just remind myself, like if I have a problem this week, well, 3 years ago, I wasn't in the position I'm in right now. So I should just be happy to be here. And, I have a problem, but it could be a whole lot worse. So, I think that just, trying to keep that positive mindset is pretty important.
Right. I said that was my last question, but I skipped a question. And this is, one of your highlights. I love your highlights, right? But my favorite one is the thoughtfulness one.
Yeah.
Why did why did you choose that one?
I'm a bit of a quote geek, to be honest. I really like reading quotes. I love writing as well, which it would be crazy. I mean, if you asked any of my high school teachers, they would be shocked that I'm saying this now, but I really enjoy writing, and I really enjoy thoughtful writing and quotes and things like that, and inspiration and lifting people up. So, as you mentioned, one of the highlights is thoughtfulness, and it's simply just quotes that I've come across on Instagram, most in which I didn't write, but just quotes that I found, either lifted me up or was a good perspective, and I wanted to put them in a place on my page that, if somebody was feeling down, maybe they'd click through it and it would bring them up.
Right. Well, it works for me, so that's why I don't know why. No, I was gonna leave with that, and then the Dragon Dance thing happened. Man, Sawyer, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming to the sanctuary. And you know what? When Nova Scotians when we're allowed to cross again without the 2 weeks thing, I'll definitely come and check out the Liberty Village for sure. My wife and I.
Awesome, man. I would love to have you guys, and maybe we could hang out and have a bonfire or something like that when you do.
Nice. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, man.